live. And yes, we are live. This is our second live Risk Matrix and our 91st podcast episode. We're really happy that you joined us here today. Couple of quick housekeeping notes before we dive in today's topic. Please stay on mute if possible during our session. Drop your questions in the Q&A. We will hit those around the 30 or so minute mark, and we will read those out loud to have them answered. Don't forget, you can always follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, YouTube, and of course the Veriforce website. My name is Paula, and I have the privilege of working with the best podcast hosts on the planet on the best podcast ever created. So right now I'm going to introduce you to our amazing
Take that,
host.
Joe Rogan, baby.
That's right, Joe Rogan. We're coming for you. First, we've got James Junkin, ASSP's 2024 Safety Professional of the Year for Training and Communications. James has personally trained over 40,000 safety professionals. Yes, you heard that right. He serves as chairman of the board of the Veriforce Strategic Advisory Board and is CEO of Mariner Gulf Consulting Services, as well as a doctoral candidate and a professor. When James talks safety, people listen. Also, we have Dr. Martin, 32-year safety veteran and recipient of the prestigious Board of Global EHS Credentialing Impact Award. Dr. Martin was president of the Board of Certified Safety Professionals and is founder of LF Martin, Inc., with expertise in occupational safety management, construction safety, and industrial hygiene. Dr. Martin is truly a safety powerhouse. And today we have a special guest, Sean Maher with Quartix. And with that, I'm going to toss it over to our hosts.
Hello, everybody, and welcome again to another episode of the Risk Matrix. We are live. Live, James. We're live today. And we have a live studio audience with us, and people have been entering the room with us. So welcome to everybody. Before we get started with our special guest, I'd like to talk a little bit about our sponsor today. Our sponsor is Quartix, the #1 vehicle tracking solution for fleets of any size, helping fleet managers and business owners in service and transport industries improve visibility, streamline operations, and reduce costs. Monitor vehicle locations in real time, cut fuel costs and wasted time, increase driver productivity and visibility, and minimize downtime with maintenance alerts. Thank you, Quartix, for sponsoring us. And I'd like to give a special shout out today to Mr. Sean Maher. Hi, Sean.
Hi, how you doing? You okay?
Good. He's in the UK today, and he's going to be talking to us a little bit about telematics. He's the sales director at Quartix, and he has 17 years in this field. He's seen how companies can use data and cut costs and make roads safer. So welcome, Sean, and welcome to my co-host there, James Junkin. Roll Tide.
Hey, roll tide, man. It's great to be live. I see a lot of names that we recognize from past podcasts, old friends, some other fellow members of our strategic advisory board. It's great to be live so we get some interaction, maybe answer your questions, have some questions for Sean here at the end of our podcast. This topic of telematics and safe driving, I just want to kind of start with some statistics because this is one of those topics within the safety profession that I don't know we really give as much attention to as we should. We're always thinking about high hazards that you found on the site, but probably the most dangerous thing that we do as workers is get in that vehicle. These numbers are from a BLS study back in 2021, and I think they're sobering. They're also included in Veriforce's Safe Driver course, but I'd like to use these statistics to set the tone of today's discussion with Sean. So aggressive driving or deliberate or unsafe driving behavior is a factor in 54% of all fatal motor vehicle crashes. In the United States, I was shocked by this number. There were 6,102,936 police reported traffic crashes. where 42,939 people were killed and an estimated 2,497,657 people were injured. I mean, those numbers are just staggering to me. As a veteran, when you think about the conflicts we've been in and the Vietnam War, 58,000 Americans lost their lives in the Vietnam War. We have that many in which we killed in motor vehicle accidents almost in 1 year. Young drivers accounted for 8.4% of all drivers involved in fatal traffic crashes in 2021. However, young drivers only made up 5% of all licensed drivers. 7,489 people 65 and older were killed, and an estimated 266,065 injured in motor vehicle crashes. Older people made up 17% of all traffic fatalities and 11% of all people injured. Now, my segment of expertise, if you will, is really in the oil and gas industry, although I've done consulting work in construction and manufacturing and other industrial settings. My roots are in the oil and gas industry. And I think you will find, based on the numbers, oil and gas workers are especially impacted. A combination of extended work hours, long commutes, and insufficient sleep tends to be the contributing factors of not only risky driving behaviors in the oil and gas industry, but in all industries. But NOSH went and surveyed 500 oil and gas workers, and they found this. Almost 2/3 reported working 12 or more hours a day. Nearly half slept less than 7 hours a night. The average round trip commute to work was about 2 hours. About a quarter of the workers reported falling asleep while operating a work vehicle or feeling extremely drowsy while driving at work more than once a month. And 17% stated they had nearly crashed while driving at work within the past week. And yet, fewer than half the respondents indicated their company's policies included journey management, fatigue management, maximum work hours, and telematics.
Let's start then, James, with that as a base. And let's throw this to Sean. Sean, I don't think all of our listeners are like, they know exactly what telematics is, what telematics does. Overall, as a science or as an offering, such as Quartix does, describe to us what telematics is and what telematics isn't.
Okay, so yeah, thank you. And the figures that you've thrown in there, James, are quite astounding. I was doing my research the other day, and in fairness, the amount of people killed on the US roads, you would fill a professional baseball stadium with that many people. That's the cold light of day when you think of that. So what's telematics? I mean, so for I've been doing this job for 25 years, and 18 of those have been with Quartix. And I think very much the focus on what telematics is now to what it probably was many years ago, I think that it's definitely changed. It was always felt to be a bit like a big brother, just people watching to see where I'm going and what I'm doing. But I think if I was to bring it into 3 words, telematics are about the utilization of your fleet, the compliance of that fleet, and then the safety of that fleet. So what we're able to do is help a business understand what does an actual real day look like in the real world for a driver. And James, you made the point about fatigue and people telling you they're driving while tired. The key point here is if you've got somebody that's out from start of day to end of day, and that day exceeds a 12-hour day, there's some serious issues there, that you've got people that are potentially working more hours than you would want them to, and that opens the door to fatigue. We can obviously also confirm, the routes that they're taking. What does that driver look like when they're driving? What is their behaviours? So again, we can identify poor driving practice, so heavy acceleration, heavy braking, speeding, and all of that normally comes around because people are being overutilized, and they haven't got enough time in the day to do what they need to do. One could also argue that it also opens up the ability to see if people are maybe suffering from a stressful background around work as well. Because again, if people are constantly racing around, the system will identify very quickly that you've got these poor driving habits. But I suppose the beginning of all of it is it's the compliance. We're able to ensure that if somebody's driving that vehicle, is it safe? Is the vehicle roadworthy in the first instance? So a driver can do a vehicle inspection before they drive. It will even ask the key information of them. Are you fit to drive? Are you healthy? Are you able to drive? Are you under the influence of anything you shouldn't be under? So really, to go back to your question, what is telematics? It is that overview of what a vehicle's activity looks like in the day, and obviously how that replicates to the driver. So again, looking at that behavior, looking at the speeding, looking at the hours it's being driven, looking at the route it's taking, looking at how long it's spending on site. Again, being able to alert if that vehicle is out longer than one would expect it to, or it's driven for too long without taking a break. So that for me is the answer to what telematics is.
Okay.
Long answer, sorry, but
let me ask you a follow-on question on that, because again, I worked for a company where we had a big fleet of cranes, and they had telematics in the vehicle, and just for our listeners' edification, how does telematics work? How does it weave into the car's system, or what is it? Satellite driven?
Yes.
How does that kind of?
So basically, yeah. So good point. I mean, the first thing is we have to install a unit into a vehicle, and that unit is basically working through GPS technology. It's looking where that vehicle is, and then via the mobile phone network, it's sending that data through to our systems, so back to our servers and up in the cloud. But the whole idea is that once that unit is installed into a vehicle, from the moment that ignition is turned on to the moment it is turned off, we can tell you everything from where that vehicle went, how it got there, what speed it was doing, what direction did it take, what kind of behavior was that vehicle doing, and that is all information that is coming through the GSM and the GPS network. So the GPS is the key. That's the bit that allows us to see exactly where that vehicle is, and that's what's giving us the information that will show us where the vehicle has gone to. And again, GPS data around accelerometers. So again, acceleration and braking, all done through GPS.
Yeah. So
go ahead.
I was just going to say, so as a safety manager, I love this idea, right? Because more data. It gives me something to look at, to think about, and to weave into the safety management system that I've got going on. But from a employee point of view, right? And James mentioned this, the big brother aspect, right? I've seen some companies, they go kind of overboard on the alerts that you can send, because that's another aspect of this too, right? Is that drivers can be alerted to behaviors that we don't want them to be. So can you speak a little bit about that? How companies use those in a good way, so that we don't get into I'd like to do this, but my employees hate it, and it's going to be a battle.
I think the first thing that we would say to any would-be customer is that you need to have a very strong driving policy. And a lot of companies, when you say to them, what is your driving policy? They look at you and go, well, what do you mean a driving policy? Well, you need one. If you've got people that are driving for you, regardless of whether they're working in the steel industry, whether they're dealing with landscape gardening, the argument is if they're driving that vehicle to and from work, they are actually deemed to be professional drivers. And therefore, a driving policy is the first point. And I think what you've said there, Dr. Martin, is bang on. People are very worried that they're going to have a boss that's just going to sit and stare at a screen all day and watch them driving around. I think statistically that doesn't happen, because we've all got the managers have got their own jobs to do. But I think the key point is get that driving policy right. Agree with your workforce what it is you're going to want to get from it and why you're bringing it in. And the significant point about the telematics element and why do we want to track our drivers are, it's there to protect them as much as it is the business. Unfortunately, we see a lot of customers where they'll have a false claim made against a driver. You were late. You billed me for when you were meant to be there and you wasn't, or you cut me up in the road and you nearly took me off the road. Well, right. That takes investigation, and if you've got the telematics system there, you can actually resolve that issue instantly, and that again gives your driver reassurance that it's being used in the right way. There is always going to be an element of a driver thinking, well, why don't they trust me? What's the problem? Why are they tracking me? But I think, in the cold light of day, it's there to protect as much as it is to identify where people may be misusing a vehicle. And of course, if somebody is misusing it, they're putting themselves, the public, and of course the employer at risk under duty of care. So yeah, driving policy, definitely the first place to start, and be very open about what you're doing. You know, tell the drivers why you're bringing in GPS telematics. What is it going to do for them? What's it going to do for the business? And the whole idea is we hope that it's going to make them more efficient and more effective and safer.
Well, I can tell you from personal experience where this changed from being a snitch device, if you will, to being one that an organization I was consulting with that all of a sudden realized this saved lives. And it was not just the lives of employees, it was the lives of my employees. So we managed the safety department for a very large oil field contractor in North Dakota where it gets cold. Like it's winter, August, September, winter. And then there's just variations of cold. Well, a couple of my safety guys had a vehicle that was equipped with telematics, right? And they went out to check on a site, and they both got out, and we never cut the trucks off because it's cold. And they got out of the truck, and they locked their radios and their keys in the truck. And they were out there all day. And the only reason that we knew that there was a problem for my safety team is one of their wives called me and said, "Hey, have you heard from so-and-so today?" And I'm like, "No, I haven't." And I tried to call him. He didn't answer. I tried to call him, his coworker. They didn't answer. I was able to call the general manager and say, "Hey, I'm looking for my guys. Can you find them?" And they were able to locate them on GPS via telematics, and we sent a team out there, and they were very, very cold. This about 5 p.m. They would not have survived the night. They would have died but for the telematics. Now, you can argue and say James could have done a better job of getting alerts, and we finally set it up. If the truck's stationary for so much time, it gives an alert and things of that nature. But always consider it as something to modify behavior and not necessarily a really critical tool that can be a life-saving tool. So yeah. I'm a big fan of your product and what it does to increase worker safety. Now, you spoke about some things, and we have a lot of safety professionals that listen to us. You know, a policy. What is the policy? We got to have a driving policy, right? Training. We need to train people what the expectation is. We just assume that people have a driver's license and they know how to drive amongst commercial vehicles. A lot of times they're driving in remote areas around a lot of construction. You know, that's where training comes in, I think. And then the aspect that you talked about from a control. This is a control. It's an administrative control, right? I certainly drive better when someone's observing me driving. And we also have the ability to have records in case there's an incident. Now, here in the United States, I'm not going to throw them all in a bucket, but you are driving with a vehicle with your logo on it, which is ripe for litigation.
Correct.
If there's an accident, there's going to be potential litigation. Your word versus the driver's word versus witnesses, which can be inconsistent, and the injured party, right? The more data you have, the better you are at defending off those claims. And I think all that also helps to modify the behavior of drivers, right? The data is very clear that it's driver behavior, at-risk behavior, whether it's fatigue, aggressive driving, whatever, long working conditions, road conditions, weather conditions, whatever. It's driver behavior that is accounting for a lot of these accidents. And I think telematics is a good way to put a control in place that we can have the documentation, but also at the same time modify potential driver behaviors. Because without it, we don't really know what happened.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry.
Sean, I was just going to ask you, I mean, I know some of my questions are pretty basic, right? But again, for the listeners that don't have a lot of background in this, again, I've used it. Sounds like James has used it. From a Quartix point of view, let's talk a little bit about the data you can and can't get, and whether or not there's some user input. So, for example, does you put the thing in the vehicle, right, and it goes from turn on to turn off, but are there also other data points that are put into the system, like from the person operating the vehicle doing pre-vehicle inspections, or is any of that stuff? What is Quartix? I guess what is the solution? Because that I think that would be helpful for our listeners.
So the full solution here is that if we take it from the point of view of the employer, as we've rightly said, is obviously keen to ensure that the vehicle and the driver are going out every day and they're giving them a full day's work, and they want that to be a good solid day's work from start to finish. If we take the driver, the first thing the driver really should be doing before they jump in any vehicle is doing a vehicle inspection, and we have an inspection app that links directly to our system. So the key point here is the fleet manager will know that vehicle inspection has been done. He or she will know how long that inspection took, and they'll know the location. So we could even alert you to say, by the way, this vehicle drove this morning without the inspection. The inspection was done at a later time. So wow. Again, you've got the compliance that says we now know that Sean got up this morning, he went out, he's checked his vehicle, it's all good, he's confirmed that he's safe to drive it, and now he's driven that vehicle. We can go one step further as well. We can even ask that driver to actually tag into the vehicle, so you know which driver is actually behind the wheel. So if you have multiple drivers, we can be saying, well, look, it was Sean driving it today, not James, and therefore this incident or this speeding fine is going to stick with Sean because Sean's declared it. Moving along, while that vehicle's in motion, we don't do anything to distract the driver. We don't have anything in the cab that says that their driving behaviour is good or bad. We think distracting a driver when they're being risky is quite a risk in itself. So we have a mobile app that allows the driver at the end of each journey to review their own driving score. It will give them their updated score. Ideally, we want them to be scoring as near to 100 out of 100 as possible, but it gives them that ability to say, actually, that wasn't the best of drives I've just done. I need to do something right. I need to do something here to put this right. Of course, while this is happening, this information is being fed back to the office. So the manager of that driver can be reviewing that driving performance, whether it be daily, weekly, monthly, or even live if they need to. So once the driver has then done the journey, obviously what we've been able to tell them is, or what they've been able to tell us is that the vehicle has had the inspection, it's safe, etc., etc. We've declared it was them driving if we've taken the driver identification system, and then importantly, they've been able to review their own performances. Now, once all of that's taken place, we can then be inputting information back into the employer live. So, for example, if a driver is driving for too long without taking a break, we can report that back. If the utilization of the vehicle exceeds, for example, a 12-hour day, again, we can be reporting this. So the whole idea of our system is there's an awful lot of data. And as you rightly say, Dr. Martin, if somebody was looking at the data, it's a full-time job, and we know it doesn't need to be. So we will work with the customer to understand what are the key exceptions they need to see that allow them to then make the most of our system. So it could be somebody finishing late every day, or somebody starting too early, somebody speeding, somebody that always seems to be arriving at the location late, etc., etc. So again, we will always consult with the customer as to what are the key drivers that are important to them. And for most of my customers, it tends to be what time do they start and what time do they finish and how are they driving. That they're the kind of key bits of information. One thing to mention with the Quartix walk-around app, there is also an incident app access within that. So again, if the vehicle's involved in a crash, as soon as they've had an incident, the system will automatically upload and say this is where the incident took place. So you've got that GPS view. The driver has the ability to take photographs, to take witness statements. And as you said, James, some of these witnesses that the potential other person may have, we don't know how genuine they are. We get that. But again, there can be pictures taken, there can be images added. We can put in, it's free text, so the driver is able to put in as much information as they want to. And within our system, we operate what's known as 10 Hertz GPS. So in simple terms, in the event of an accident, we can play back second on second what the vehicle was doing leading up to, at, and immediately after a crash. And I will say, since we launched that, we've probably helped people mitigate more claims than they've actually been found responsible for. Yeah, you drive into the back of somebody in the UK, as an example. If you hit them at 20 miles an hour, that's a high-speed whiplash claim. and that's a £15,000 insurance payout. If we can say, well, hang on a minute, we're not arguing, there was a crash, but the actual point of impact was only 5 miles an hour, that can make a big difference, not only to the employer but to the employee as well. So yeah, that.
Since you brought up insurance, let's talk about insurance just a little bit. As far as based on your experience, how are insurance companies leveraging that data, and for organizations that utilize telematics, what kind of discounts are you seeing? Discounts off premiums for using telematics?
So I have to be careful how I answer this because I can't guarantee any insurance saving by using a telematic system.
That's right.
However, one would argue if you have got if you haven't had a telematic system and you have a high risk premium, and you can demonstrate to your insurer that by bringing in this kind of system, you have seen your driving behavior get better, you've seen your speeding reduce. Those kind of arguments are the kind of things you can be putting in at premium renewal time to say, look, this is the evidence that I have done something as a business to mitigate my risk. And we can see here that when we first employed telematics, our risk scores were high. We've done education, we've got the drivers engaged, and we can show you that our risk profiles are getting better and better. And therefore, one would argue that there is an opportunity to be speaking to your broker and saying, look, you should be helping me here. And again, we don't sell our product as a theft device, but if a vehicle is stolen and that unit is not unplugged, you're going to get your vehicle back. Which again is kind of a key point. And a lot of our customers use geofencing to make sure that if a vehicle moves outside of an area at a certain time of night, it can alert somebody to say, my vehicle's being moved and it probably shouldn't be. So there's your first notification of loss.
That's kind of like when Jeeps were sold in the they probably are, but the Jeep, the rugged Jeep everybody loves and see on TV with the big wheels, right? They were low jack was installed in all those because they were high theft. But pretty soon, all the people who were stealing Jeeps knew how to take the low jack out. So I'm not so sure you got your Jeep back, but that's a good point. I want to jump back a little bit back in the conversation here, Sean, where you talked about what the driver sees at the end of the drive, meaning like, here's your score, right?
Yeah.
I love that. Maybe some safety managers wouldn't love that, but there's a lot of talk in the safety community and actually in all businesses about gamification of different aspects of either safety or performance, etc. Everybody loves a good competition, right?
Yep.
Right.
And so, you may or may not like this, but I mean, I think that there seems to be like maybe a company can set what they want scored, and the employees can, compete either anonymously or whatever, and receive some kind of safe driving bonus or whatever. But I mean, I love that aspect because it gives feedback to the employee, and if the company uses it right in a gamification type way,
yep.
You might see improvements just from that, right? Everybody likes to see they got 100,
yep.
right? Or everybody likes to see that they went up 3 points because they're beating.
No, I agree.
Jimmy Lump, right, on the score. So, anyways, I'm not so sure. Can they change what goes into that scoring system?
So absolutely. So we have predefined scores that so we have a 0 to 50 is a high risk driver, a 50 to 80 is medium, and then 80 and above is low. But the customer has the ability to make those changes, and we have a league table, and everybody loves a league table. I mean, so obviously I've been in the UK. My sport is soccer. We call it football, but obviously I know it's soccer for you. Nobody ever wants to be bottom of a league. If you're in the soccer, you do not want to be at the bottom of the league. And what we actually tend to find is that by bringing that into play, it can be a very interesting environment, because let's be fair, we all think we're the best drivers on the planet. We all think we drive wonderfully well. I know when we first introduced risk profiling, I was actually appalled at how poor my driving was, and I had to change rapidly because I present it. But we've had a lot of customers that have genuinely bought the league table in, and I can remember one company particularly operating a fleet of 350 vehicles in the landscape industry, over the year, they were awarding Amazon vouchers, so equivalent to $150 of Amazon vouchers to the best performing drivers. And the overall best driver for the year was bought a Muddy Fox mountain bike. So in the UK, that was about £1,000, so about $1,200.
Wow.
When they sat at the end of the year and they worked out what they'd paid out, which I think worked out to be about £3,000 in prizes, they calculated their fuel saving to be 11,000.
Wow.
Because good driving brings in less fuel use. They also said that their vehicles were not visiting workshops for repairs and brakes, etc., as regularly, because people were driving so sensibly that there was a heavy reduction in fuel. The key point is they still did the same amount of jobs every day, so nobody needed to be racing around like I'd say Lewis Hamilton as an English racing driver. But the point was, we proved that you can still do the same amount of work, but you don't have to be doing it. You don't have to be doing it like you're on a racetrack. And we've had a lot of customers that have done that, from big companies with 350 right the way down. I remember we had a company that was had 10 vans, and the deal was, if you were the bottom of the league at the end of the week, you had to wash the other 9 vans.
So I want to.
If you're bottom, you got to go wash the vans.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I don't know. I don't know about punishment, but you hit on something that I just want to note to our listeners, right? And to other people that are listening later. We talk about return on investment, right?
Yeah.
A lot as safety professionals, because we're always trying to figure out, how do we justify XYZ being implemented in our company to the upper echelons, the executives, the people who are making the decisions. And what Sean just gave you was a perfect example of return on investment, right? And sometimes you have to dig a little deeper to find those things. I mean, this was on the surface. Who would have thought? I thought you were going to say saved on accidents and incidents, which I'm probably sure you did too. But fuel, when you're driving trucks, diesel fuel is not a cheap cost, and that's a pretty good savings. That's double what the cost was of implementation. So, I just, for our listeners, return on investment, right? He just gave you a perfect example.
I mean, the whole thing of GPS tracking, it should be cost neutral.
I don't. But when I got married, all of a sudden I got this driver assist, right? That helped me slow down, stop braking hard, quit following too close, in the form of my wife, right? But I think that this type of technology is something that's ever evolving, right? When we first got started in telematics years ago, it just kind of told you where we were, right?
Yeah.
Or if you were speeding. So where do you see telematics in the future? Is AI going to be part of this?
I think AI will. We're starting to see the AI coming more and more into the UK. I think at the moment it's in the very early stages, and I think the issue we're seeing when we've done testing on it and speaking with our customer base is that the problem with AI at the moment is it's given a lot of false negatives. So it's telling you there's a problem, and when you look at it, there isn't, and you're in a bit of a position where it could be the boy who cried wolf, if I use that as the example. But the point is, if you're not checking these things, then you're potentially opening the door to some bigger issues. But I think it's over the next, I'd say over the next 24 months, I think we'll be seeing a lot more of that kind of information coming through. There's always been the talk as well, will the OEMs take it over, and companies like us, will we be able to compete with that? But most companies I work with, they have a mixed fleet, and if you've got a mixed fleet, you can't necessarily operate with one OEM, because you're not going to be able to get everything out of it you want. So there is definitely a big market for us still here. But yeah, I think that's where the technology will start to go over the next sort of 2 to 3 years.
Great. So Sean, we reached the part in our show where hopefully, if Paul is still hanging around, that we're going to take some questions from our audience, if they have any. So audience, you have the ability to type into the chat, and hopefully, Paula, if you're still around, you can feed us some questions that you see for Sean.
Yep, absolutely. So we have a question here. Is there any benefit to having the leaders or the managers utilize telematics to walk and talk so they can build trust with the employees?
Oh yeah, 100%. I think anything like this, you've got to be you've got to be working as a company together. You don't want the whole idea of bringing in a telematics system is that you're trying to make your business more efficient and more effective. And I think you've got to walk hand in hand with the employee so they understand the benefit of what you're bringing in and why you're doing it. I mean, that's a really important point. Why do we do it? Why are we wanting to do it? And what are the benefits to the business? I mean, the key point is, if we're going back to what you mentioned there, the return on investment element of this is we would always expect our system to be cost neutral. But the whole idea of our product is to make sure that businesses are more efficient and more effective and therefore can make more money. That's why we bring telematics in. And so, yeah, I think very much that the employer and the employee should be doing this hand in hand. And that's why I go back to the point of having a driving policy to make sure everybody understands what you're doing and why you're doing it and what's expected.
And I also think, Paula, that from a safety side, this reveal flaws in your journey. You know, as an executive, we have a lot of things, and you know, sometimes we forget that working people 12 hours a day and then having a 2-hour commute both ways probably is not the best way to run our business from a safety standpoint, right? And I think that gives you the data and gives employees a voice through the data to maybe some business practices that are impacting potentially their safety.
Right.
Yeah, I think James, you made a point at the very beginning. Nobody goes to work on a site without the proper PPE. You wouldn't dream of sending a scaffolder up into scaffolding without the right equipment. But like you say, you're happy to give a set of keys to a person and go, there's a vehicle worth $60,000. It's full of fuel. It's full of equipment. See you later.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good luck. Don't wreck. And if you do,
see you when you get back, and don't crash. Yeah.
So I have a question for you, Sean, and it's on topic, but something that might help our listeners, that this is kind of piquing their interest. Do you have any literature you can point them to for, you know, the efficacy of telematics, how it works, etc. Maybe even white papers that Quartix puts out.
Absolutely.
I mean, I think that maybe if our producer can grab those from you, it would be nice for them to be able to kind of follow up on this show and see,
100%.
you know, see what the screenshots look like, see what kind of data is coming out of this and what the literature says about telematics, because I think it would be very enlightening.
Absolutely. I mean, our website, www.quartix.com, will give you a link to our site. There are plenty of white papers on there around what we do and why we've done it. There's things, you know, building a business case for why do you bring telematics in? How do you bring the employee on with that? We've got case studies of companies that are using it in real time and are talking about the savings that they've made. And you know, we've got a dedicated team in the US that are more than happy to take a call and demo the system, talk you through it, show you what it's all about. You know, we're obviously a company that are very proud to be in the US, and you know, we will happily talk to anybody. And my team in the US will be more than happy to even provide a live demo of the system. But yeah, head to Quartix.com. And everything you need is there, but we can definitely get that posted through and give you the links to that.
Thank you. Paula, do you have any more questions for us?
Yeah, I do. We got a question here on how should telematics data integrate with other safety systems in training programs?
It's a great question. So I'm not a safety expert, so I think it's only fair that I mention that. I think we have safety experts sat in this room. I can tell you what I would do, but I would probably suggest that it probably more likely comes from Dr. Martin and James, I would say.
Go
ahead, James.
I'd be able to get is data to more refine your training programs and your safety meetings and your toolbox talk. It's one thing to get up and tell everybody to drive safe. It's another thing to be able to get up and take the scoring Sean's talking. And look, 60% of you are braking too hard. That means you're following too close. That means you got a potential to have a crash, right? So now I can really gear down and drill down on exactly what we need to be talking about with regards to the most hazardous thing most of us are going to do, which is get behind a wheel of a vehicle. So I think that's how it would integrate. Dr. Martin,
So
got any thoughts?
how would I integrate it, or what kind of noodles around in my head just kind of thinking about this? Certainly, I'm not in a position right now with any of my clients to do this, but I think of the risk profile of the entire company, right? And I think most of us, you can either base your risk profile off of dollars spent, dollars lost, dollars of incidents, those types of things, and certainly driving vehicles is one of the most dangerous things that we do on a job site or over the road as part of a company, right? So how does that figure into your risk profile? And when you're talking about ROI and you're looking at your risk register, you could probably key those things and rank them and do all kinds of stuff with the data, right? But it can integrate as one piece of several puzzle pieces in that risk profile. That's how I would look at it.
I mean, what
and
Quartix
one of
would
the
say,
pieces that
sorry,
go ahead, Joe.
I was going to say what Quartix will tell you, and what we're comfortable in saying is that if you have a driver in that risk profile operating in the red, they are 20 times more likely to be involved in an at-fault accident, and that is proven data. So as I say, we're not risk managers. Our job is to identify there is a problem, and then you need professionals like these guys to tell you how to adjust to that. But they're some of the key elements that we can give, and it's kind of obvious if you have somebody that is constantly speeding, you've got a risk around them losing their license and therefore losing their livelihood. And again, if you're in a specialist environment role, it could be quite difficult to find a replacement for that person as well.
Right.
And one thing we within a company has a billboard on the side of the vehicle with the company's name on it, right? So getting back to what I call respectful driving and not aggressive driving only improves the company's image. I can tell you of companies, I'm not going to name them here, but over the years have cut people off in traffic, speeding, acting aggressively, and sometimes I've been motivated to call the company and say, hey, this vehicle number, whatever, you need to do something about this guy or we're going to have a problem, right? But that's your reputation that's out there on the road.
Yep, absolutely.
And you never know decision makers that you're going to see that you pass, that you cut off, that you aggressively drive around, that say, I'd never hire these people. If they operate like that, what are they going to do on my job site? So reputational risk kind of fits into the overall risk profile, what Dr. Martin was talking about to safe driving. What you got, Paula?
So
Dr. Martin?
Yeah, I was gonna. I've been chatting here with Paul a little bit offline, and we don't have any more burning questions from our audience. But if you do have those questions, certainly you can pop them into the chat on Veriforce's YouTube. You can email Veriforce or Dr. Junkin, Mr. Junkin, or I, and we can get those questions to Sean about telematics and about Quartix if they're specific. But I'd like to take this time to thank you, Sean Maher, for coming on our show and talking to us about telematics. I learned a bunch of stuff today, and hopefully our audience did too. Thank you to everybody who joined us live. Again, you can watch this later, but we sure are very entertaining when we're live. And if you want, you can like us and share our podcast on your LinkedIn or your Instagram or your TikTok or wherever you want to share it. Share it and subscribe so that every week you know that we're going to be here live talking to you about something new. James?
Hey, thank you for all who joined us live today. We'll be doing it again next week, next Tuesday, same time, different link. Make sure that you get that on your calendar. We'd love to have a live audience. We like interacting with our listeners because, look, we do this for you. We do this for you. So share this with your friends. Go over to that YouTube channel, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. That way you get notifications. If you're not watching this live and you're watching it on YouTube or Spotify or Apple Podcast, hey, your mama wants you to subscribe to the Veriforce YouTube channels and the Spotify channel for the Risk Matrix and the Apple Podcast channel. So you can listen to us while you're driving down the road safely with Quartix Telematics on board to monitor your at-risk behaviors. It's okay to listen to the risk matrix while you drive. But thank you, everybody, for coming. Thank you, Sean, for what you do, for bringing workers home safe. Until next time, hey, roll tide. Thank all of you for what you do for bringing workers home safe. And you keep doing that till we see you again.
Thank you.